and welcome to another episode of The Big Game Hunters. I'm Mike.
And I'm Tom. Be sure to check out our Kickstarter page in the links below. Help us fund Season 3. Today we're going to look at the compelling traitor game Battlestar Galactica. But first, Chit Chat.
In today's Chit Chat, we're going to be talking about brain burners and downtime. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Chit Chat. Today, we're going to be talking about brain burners and downtime. So these two topics are only tangentially linked, but I think we'll explain soon why we put them together.
Okay.
I chose this today because, for me, the big reason I'm not as into a lot of Euro games as I'm American-style games is because they're real brain burners in a negative way for me.
Okay.
So when we say a brain burner, that's a term you hear a lot. Yeah. That it's pretty self-explanatory. It means a game that really makes you think hard. You really have to go through several options, explore several paths. You're kind of going back and forth over a move every turn. Those games are brain burners. They really just burn your brain. They make you think. Now, there are some kind of brain burners that I really enjoy. For instance, one of the 10 games I gave this season was Race to the Galaxy. I really like Race. It makes me think in a way that I really enjoy. I love that kind of constant decision-making race of what do I pay for, how do I pay for it, what's going to help me out a couple turns from now. That's a fun kind of decision-making for me. Mm-hmm. Same with Thunderstone. You know, all the games I've given great scores to this season are mostly for that reason. Fleet Captains maybe being the exception. I enjoy Fleet Captains for different reasons. It doesn't, tickle my cerebral cortex. I just enjoy it. It's just really fun.
I'm reminded of Lost Cities. For me, that's a real brain burner, mm-hmm. Like calculating, I need to get this many points and these many turns are mm-hmm. left, and what are the odds that the 9 or the 10 card that I want is still in the deck with that many cards left. Lost Cities is about the limit of what I can handle as far as mathematical calculations in the game. Yeah,
that's actually a great segue because Lost Cities is also a good brain burner for me. I really like the game, and I like it, and it's a brain burner. I totally agree, and it's very mathy. It's just colors and numbers. Yeah. There's not too much else to it. Although we did mention in the review that it kind of rises above feeling like numbers.
It has a dueling element,
mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's why it still stays in the good brain burner category for Mike. So why I don't like the really heavy Euros. I'm thinking of the Euros that don't even try to pretend that they're doing anything that evocative. I like Agricola. I don't love it, but I can definitely see why it deserves the praise it definitely deserves the praise it's gotten. And we have some Euros up here. We have some Knizia games, mm-hmm. obviously. But the really heavy ones like Amun-Re, Year of the Dragon, those kind of economic games that you're playing. There's an English theme one that I can't remember right now too. But the ones that you're playing, for the long haul, you're building up points with your engine over time. They're very, very mathy, and for some reason they feel mathy to me. Mm-hmm. Playing them to me does not feel very fun. It feels like work.
Yeah.
I'm not bad at them. I can play them. I understand them, but playing them, it doesn't feel like a game. It feels like I'm trying to just do... Every turn I go through the same process of, okay, if I build this pyramid, all right, this will give me this points and cost these resources. Okay, this will cost me this. And I have to go through several paths, and I feel like every turn, it's not AP. It's not like I'm choosing between two options and weighing their pros and cons. I'm just crunching the numbers and figuring out what will give me the most points over the next 1, 2, 3 turns.
Yep, that seems to be one of the things many people like about these kind of games is that they do enforce that sort of brain-burning, critical thinking kind of mentality. It's like enjoying taking an IQ test or something. Mm-hmm. Those can be fun every once in a while, mm-hmm. but that's not something I'm really looking for in my gaming.
Right.
I've been introduced to games like Set. I don't know if you know that one. It's like it's super Euro, super mathy. It's put sets together. I can't even explain it well because I played it once and I immediately realized this was not the game for me.
Yeah.
Amun-Ra was another one I played. Tigris and Euphrates is another one I played.
That one's for me too.
All of those
really beautifully designed game.
They're great,
but
just too much work. Mm-hmm. Too much work. It's like math class at the game table.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I know we're probably gonna turn some people off with this one. People are, Tigris and Euphrates. We're mentioning some very well-known, well-liked games, and I totally respect that. But I don't. Maybe leave us a comment about why they're fun. Explain to me why you enjoy these games.
Even more simple ones too. Maybe not as popular. The laser game that bounces around. Cat.
Yeah.
that really felt like I don't know. There's something about the pattern like projection. You have to just be able to adapt and predict where the laser's going to move around. That has like a geometric mathematical quality for me that is just too complex.
I think I haven't played that one. I've seen it. I think I would like that one because I like other abstract games. I like Ingenious. I like Blockus. I don't mind that kind of spatial reasoning thinking. It's really the ones where I'm crunching numbers for scoring. Those are the ones that for some reason I can wrap my head around them, but it hurts. My head doesn't want to bend that way. So yeah, it's those kind of games that I'm really not crazy about. It's not a matter of theme, I don't think. I mean, Lost Cities doesn't have more theme than Umbre or any of those, but for some reason they just don't grab me the same way. I think a part of it too, and this is the related part, is downtime. So downtime in games is what gives them, on our breakdown scales, the slow quality. Now, the slow quality is not necessarily a bad thing. For instance, Carcassonne, classic game we use for slow, also a classic Euro that I enjoy. It's very slow, but it doesn't feel that bad. I don't know why. I'm not that interested in what my opponents are doing, but I feel like it's a game where I'm just kind of kicking back, having a drink.
The even pace of the game it sort of allows you to prepare for your turn, but you don't really have to. You are watching your opponent, but on your turn, you're just sort of plotting your own strategy, and then you can incorporate new information as their turns take. That's why for that particular.
I think it also is the length of the turns because there's not. I don't think of it as being all that strategic. I think it was more tactical.
Yeah. But it's the even pace I think that makes the slow of that so okay.
Yeah. Whereas with the games I was talking about, You're the Dragon. I feel like there are turns where if people are playing it well, I'm just gonna have to resign myself to hanging out there while they're crunching the same numbers that I just crunched.
Right.
And I guess even my turn feels kind of downtimey, and I think that's why. So the game doesn't feel like it picks up at any point.
Yeah, I think games. I'm definitely drawn to games that are highly interactive. Like I said, Lost Cities. Even when it's not your turn, there really isn't downtime because you can still be thinking, okay, he just drew a card, so that reduces the chance of finding that white 10 by how much now? Should I keep going after this?
Yeah.
Should I do something else? Yeah.
Yeah, and because you're trying to get in his head, it's a different kind of thinking. I think that's why I don't mind that one, even though it is mathy. The other thing, I guess, is those kind of number crunchy brain burners for me. I kind of get that feeling sometimes and dislike games on the final turn. When games come down to that, going cardboard, it was called the Dutchy Panic Time. And that kind of, because in Dominion, when you get down to the end of the game and nobody's going to cycle their deck again, you realize that you just have to start buying Dutchy.
Yep.
And so, but that applies, I think, in a negative way to games like Chaos in the Old World. It's an Ameritrash game, FFG, no question, but that last turn really kills that game for me because it's so mathy. It feels like the last turn of Chaos feels just as bad as, Amun-Re or You're the Dragon or the other ones because that's what you're going through. It's the same exact kind of thought process where I'm looking at, okay, well, I can go here. That'll give me X points, here. That's Y points. And it just takes a while. And like I said, it's not AP. It's not weighing choices. It's just figuring them out.
Just processing them.
Yeah, it's like a computer could play those games as well as a human. And that, I think, is the weirdness for me. It doesn't feel like the kind of decision-making that makes games fun. It feels like something you could have a robot do, and they would be better at it.
It can feel like a chore, yeah. Mm-hmm. Anything else we need to say about downtime or the other one?
No,
brain
burners.
See,
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I'm interested in hearing other people what their takes on this because this is definitely a personal, bias of mine, and I know that these are very popular games. So yeah, tell us what you think about the brain burners. Do you enjoy that kind of thinking? Is it just that I'm not a math person? Is it as simple as that? I don't know. But now we're gonna move on to a not very mathy game, Battlestar Galactica. Now I'm going to teach you how to play Battlestar Galactica. Battlestar Galactica is a traitor game set in the world of the TV series. Players are divided into two groups, humans and Cylons. Humans win the game by moving the ship at least 8 distance and then making one final jump to Kobol. Cylons win the game by preventing the humans from making this objective. They can do so in 6 different ways. They can reduce any of the gauges to 0. That means that they can make the humans run out of fuel, food, morale, or population. In addition, the Cylons immediately win if the boarding party marker, a Centurion, makes it all the way down the boarding party track. And finally, the Cylons will immediately win if they can blow up Galactica. This means that at any given time, if there are 6 damage tokens on Galactica simultaneously, the humans immediately lose. Battlestar Galactica is an epic game, and it comes with a lot of components. To begin with, you'll have the You Are Not a Cylon cards and the You Are a Cylon cards. These will be dealt out at the very beginning of the game, and again halfway through the game. If you were given a You Are Not a Cylon card and a You Are a Cylon card, then you are a Cylon. The You Are Not a Cylon cards just have a little flavor text in the middle, nothing much to say there. But the You Are a Cylon cards will give you a special ability when you reveal yourself. In addition, there are also sympathizer cards. Sympathizer cards will only be used in certain numbers of players and will come into play halfway through the game. A sympathizer is a human that may end up playing on the Cylon side, depending on if they're winning or losing. In addition, there are destination cards. These cards have a number at the bottom depicting distance. Once the Galactica has moved 8 distance, you can make one final jump to Cobalt and win the game as the humans. In addition, in the middle, you'll see some sort of penalty, sometimes also a benefit. Usually, destination cards involve spending fuel. Next up are crisis cards in 3 different flavors. A crisis card has a lot of stats on it. At the top, you'll see the name of the crisis, and in the top left corner, you'll see the difficulty of the crisis, and below that, the colors that contribute positively to solving the crisis. In the crisis phase, players will put skill check cards in the middle, and these colors of skill checks will add to making the difficulty. Other colors will subtract. In the middle, you'll see a little flavor text, and below that, you'll see the fail conditions, pass conditions, and the halfway conditions. In other words, if you get at least 8 on this skill check, but you don't quite make the 11 difficulty, then there will be a lesser penalty. At the bottom, you'll see what enemy ships activate, in this case, heavy raiders, and you also see a potentially orange star, which means that you move one forward on the jump track. The jump track helps you get to the next point of jumping when you get a new destination card. If you don't see the orange star, then you do not move forward on the jump track. Other types of crises just simply involve a choice that one of the players has to make. There is no skill check involved. It's simply choosing between 2 negative things with occasional benefits thrown in. Same symbols apply at the bottom. This one has the base stars launching new ships. And finally, there are the crisis cards that involve the enemy ships simply activating and attacking Galactica. You'll go through these cards step by step to determine how the enemy ships will activate and move. There are also super crisis cards. These cards work like a regular crisis, except only a revealed Cylon can play them from the Cylon ship. Every player will use skill check cards. On your character chart, which I'll get to shortly, you'll see how many skill check cards you get every turn. These skill check cards have a number in the top corner that gives you the value toward completing checks, specifically crises. In the middle, you'll see some effects. If you don't see the term action, like in this card, then you can play it when it says. For instance, this one is played before resolving a skill check. If you do see the word action, then you can instead play one of these cards as your action for your turn. Every card has a color, which tells you what type of card it is, tactics, politics, etc., and also, of course, what skill checks it's helpful or detrimental toward. You'll also have a number of little cardboard standees, which will depict your character. Tom Zarek is the best. And of course, you'll have the full character sheet, which will tell you your abilities, how many cards you draw at the beginning of your turn, and of what colors. And at the bottom, you'll see a detriment. This is something that will make it harder for your character to win the game if you're human. You'll also have a number of damage tokens, which are placed on Galactica when it gets hit. These damage tokens are shuffled, and when they're flipped, they'll depict some sort of detriment. Some damage tokens will show a specific location on Galactica that will be disabled when they are flipped. Others will instead attack a resource, like food. The same is basically true of the damage tokens for the base stars. If a base star receives 3 damage, it is destroyed, but each damage token also randomly disables one element of the base star. For instance, this prevents a base star it's on from firing. Along with the standees, you'll also have these little discs depicting all the pilot characters. This disc is placed below the Vipers when the character is piloting a ship. That brings me to the plastic ships. There are Vipers, which are the allied ships that players can get in, fly around to attack enemies. Raptors, which are simply risked in order to achieve certain effects. The Raiders and Heavy Raiders, which are the enemy ships. Heavy Raiders will try to launch Centurions on Galactica, while Raiders will simply try to damage your ships. And of course, the base stars, which launch enemy ships and attack Galactica. You'll also have the Admiral and President role cards. At the beginning of the game, these will be given out to players in a particular line of succession. They will be held until some event changes the current President or Admiral. The Admiral comes with 2 nuke tokens, which he can launch at base stars to do massive damage to them. The President includes an entire quorum deck. The quorum deck allows the President to do a variety of things, like give inspirational speeches. These cards are pretty self-explanatory. They'll usually simply have an action that you can use them as in the middle. Finally, you'll have the first player token, or the active player token, which will pass around the table, and 1d8 for resolving combat and risking raptors. Since Battlestar Galactica is such a massive game, there's a little bit of setup involved. First, you'll place all the dials to the top marker with the arrow. Then, you'll place the fleet marker on the start space of the jump track. Next, you'll randomly determine the starting player. That player will choose the first character. He can choose from any character available, especially Tom Zarek, and once he does, then the next player will have to choose a character of a different type. Since Tom Zarek is a political leader, the next player will have to choose a character that is either a support character, which can always be chosen, a pilot, or a military leader. Once your team has assembled one of every type, then the next player is free to choose again from all the types. This continues until everybody has a character. Then those players take the character charts and the associated standees and place the standees on the starting spaces as indicated on the character chart. Then you'll give out the 2 role cards, the President and the Admiral. These cards will go to the players listed first in the line of succession for each role. The Admiral will get the nuke tokens, and the President will get the deck of quorum cards. The President will start with 1 quorum card in hand. Then you'll form the loyalty deck. This is formed with a combination of You Are Not a Cylon, You Are a Cylon, and potentially sympathizer cards. This is done according to the system as displayed here and in the rulebook. Once you've formed the loyalty deck, then you will deal out skills. The skills cards are shuffled into 5 different decks, and every player can draw at this time a number of skills based on their colors here. Each player except the starting player of the game will receive 3 skills at this time, and they can receive them in any combination of the colors they possess. This means that Tom Zarek has access to yellow, green, and purple, so he can take 3 of any one, or some combination that adds up to 3. Once the skill cards have been given out, you'll place these ships as shown here. A base star in front of Galactica, along with 3 Raiders, 2 Vipers beneath Galactica, and 2 civilian ships at the back. Now, you'll create the first Destiny deck. The Destiny deck is comprised of 2 cards from the top of each of the skill decks. This will be created periodically throughout the game when it runs out in the same fashion. Now you're ready to begin the game. Battlestar Galactica is played out in turns, and on your turn, you'll go through 6 steps. First, you'll receive skill cards as shown on your character chart. If you have a multi-skill, like Apollo's green-yellow multi-skill, you can choose any combination that adds up to that number from either of the 2 skill decks. Once you've drawn your skill cards, you can move. When you're moving aboard Galactica, One movement can take you anywhere on the ship. There is nothing to worry about for distance. The same is true for Colonial 1. However, if you're moving to or from Galactica, then you must discard a skill card. Then you can take one action. Your action can either be the action depicted on any of the locations on the ship, or it can be an action listed on a skill card, or it can be an action shown on your character chart. After you take your action, you'll draw a crisis card. When you draw a crisis, you'll show it to every player, and then you'll go over what it does, and you'll take 2 cards. If it's a skill crisis, like this one, you'll take 2 cards from the top of the Destiny deck, keep them face down, and put them in the middle of the table. Then, every player, starting with the player to the left of the active player, will declare how many skill cards he or she is putting into the mix. You'll keep going in that order until everyone has placed as many skill cards as he'd like in the middle of the table. You'll shuffle those skill cards together and then reveal them. Any cards that are of the colors shown on the crisis, in this case yellow, green, and red, contribute positively to completing the challenge. Any other colors will contribute negatively in the amounts shown at the top of the skill card. If you make the difficulty rating, in this case 11, then you have passed the check, and you will follow the pass effect, in this case no effect. If you fail it, you take the fail penalty, and for some there is a partial success. For instance, if you hit 8 or more, then you'll get the partial failure penalty on this card. After that, you'll activate enemy ships as shown in your crisis. In this case, you'll activate any heavy raiders on the board. If there are no heavy raiders, then you do not do anything. Heavy raiders activations will also activate the centurions that the heavy raiders place. When a heavy raider reaches one of the 2 tube spaces on Galactica and that activates, he will deposit a centurion, which will be placed on the start track of this boarding track. Every time heavy raiders activate in the future, this token will move along the track, and if he is not killed on the armory location, then the humans will lose when he reaches the end of it. If you see this icon, this means that any base stars present will launch raiders, 3 raiders each. If there are no base stars present, you simply ignore this. This icon means that base stars will attack Galactica according to the battle chart. You'll roll a d8, and on a certain result, you'll damage the ship using the damage tokens that I explained earlier. If there are no base stars, again, this is ignored. Finally, this symbol activates raiders. When this happens, any raiders will activate following a few steps. First, raiders will try to attack any manned Vipers. Then they will try to attack unmanned Vipers. Then, if there are no Vipers, they will try to attack any civilian ships. If there are no civilian ships, they will move to try to get closest to the next civilian ship. Once you've activated all the enemies, then the last phase of the turn is potentially moving up the jump track. If you see one of these orange stars, then you will move up the jump track 1 space. If you do not, then you won't. When the jump track is on the -3 or the -1 space, any player may go to the FTL control space and use their action to try to jump the ship. When you do so, you'll roll a die, and there's a chance that you'll lose some population when you jump, people you're leaving behind. However, if you don't use this option, then when you get to the end of the jump track, the space depicting auto jump, then the ship will automatically jump. Either way, when the ship jumps, you'll take the top 2 cards. The Admiral only will look at the top 2 cards of the destination deck, choose one of them to resolve, and put the other one on the bottom of the deck. The Admiral can say, in general, what the card was, good or bad, but may not give any specifics, such as the exact number of spaces or the name of the card. You'll continue in this manner until the ship has moved 8 distance, and then made one final jump to Kobol, making the humans win, or if the Cylons meet any of their victory conditions by preventing the humans from reaching their goal. Now you know how to play Battlestar Galactica. Now that you know how to play Battlestar Galactica, more or less, we're going to take a look at it in our point-counterpoint review.
Because Mike and I agree about the game, I'm going to roll to see who will argue for it and who will argue against. If it's even, I'll take the pros, and if it's odd, he will. And even
It's
8.
even, so your respite from hatred continues, Tom.
Oh, so I'm going to argue for Battlestar Galactica. Mike will argue against. I'm going to start.
Please do.
I'm going to say, not only is this a compelling social game, it's compelling because of the traitor aspect of it. So you have, when we were talking about it, we talked a lot in comparison with Shadows of Camelot, another very popular traitor game. This one is better because not only do you have the card, the way the card interaction works, the common pool of cards that go together, the traitor can sabotage that deck, but also confusion about who is sabotaging that deck comes from the Destiny, it's Destiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Destiny deck. That interaction is really interesting, so you can sort of look at people's characters like, oh, there's some purples there that sabotage this one, you have access to purple, that kind of interaction, really interesting. And then the other aspect in comparison to Shadows is that you have more to do when you're the traitor, but you're still hidden. There are more proactive things you can do to move your agenda along. Mm-hmm. A really awesome traitor game.
Yeah, absolutely. Unlike Shadows, the traitor can actually stay hidden and spoil the pot with the card pool. But that's all well and good if you have just nothing but traitors and non-traitors, or humans in silence, if you will. But when you throw sympathizers into the mix, forget it. Because sympathizers just screw this game up. It's fine for specific numbers of players, but when you have a number of players that requires a sympathizer, then that just totally throws things off kilter. The reason I think is because sympathizers their loyalty is determined by whether or not any of the gauges are in the red. So you can be doing, for instance, very, very well on 3 gauges, and have just, say, food in red, and all of a sudden you have a sympathizer that is working for the humans when the Cylons really needed him.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. You can have several things just on the very verge of red, but the sympathizer comes out as a Cylon and just wipes the floor with the humans. And you can just that kind of the possibility to end up with as many Cylons as humans, or nearly as many, is just ridiculous. It totally debalances the game, unstabilizes it, and it's just there just doesn't seem to be a good solution. Like I don't really fault Core Knixa or Fantasy Flight because I don't know what else they could have done. I don't have an easy fix, but it just doesn't really work well with that number.
That's unfortunate. I can't disagree though. On to my next favorite thing. It's going to be the character abilities specifically. So the character abilities are really they engage you in that social aspect. Like by reading your character abilities, you sort of get an idea of who this character should be and how that is going to play into the social interaction at the table. So your favorite example is Tom Zarek. You can tell just by reading
your friend and mine, Tom Zarek. Tom Zarek for president.
You can just read Tom Zarek's card and see. Not only do you learn without ever having watched the show how he is as a character, but you get a sense for the kind of gameplay you're going to adopt as Tom Zarek. Really awesome element that adds to the social aspect of the game. And then the roles themselves of what are they, President and Admiral, and then the later expansion adds the CAG, which it's iffy, but it's there. Those also having those roles also help drive the social aspect of the game. The crisis cards, the president has to decide, or the admiral chooses whoever. Those aspects just all drive the social interaction at the table. I think that's really an awesome element.
Yeah. I'm not going to say that I played Tom Zarek every time, but I've played Tom Zarek every time. And I regret nothing, quite frankly, Tom. Because, you know what? It's a social game, like you said. I like to get into it. I like to role play it. I like to, have fun around the table with table talk. But I kind of have to do that, Tom, because there's just too much luck in this game. This game can't be about winning or losing. It can't be about struggling to root out the Cylons, because ultimately it's going to come down to the crises. No matter what you do, no matter how optimally you play, no matter how much people are alpha gaming and making sure that every play is made very efficiently, the game can still just get you by having too many crises come out that eat the same resource.
Right.
So if you have 5 crises come out all in the same part of the deck, it's a big deck. You're going to get there's no guarantee you'll get any particular distribution. If you have 5 crises come out and eat your food, then you're going to starve to death, and there's nothing you can do about it. Doesn't matter how well you play. It doesn't matter how Tom Zarek you are. You can't fix it. So That really annoys me, that the game can essentially win without the traders doing anything. I've had multiple games where, all the initial round of players were all loyal, and then the traders only popped in halfway through, which is another complaint, I think, that if the traders pop in halfway through, their lives are very, very difficult. If there are no traders in the first half of the game, it's very hard for the traders to win. But when that happens, I've seen games on the flip side where even though they shouldn't be able to win in that situation, they've done very, very little. They've done nothing up until the second reveal. After they're revealed, after the second bout of loyalty cards, they still don't take many traders' actions. The last game we played, our traders were very, very passive, and they still almost won. They still almost took us down to 0 fuel just because the cards happened to eat our fuel.
And we couldn't get a long string of no jumps. That can help hurt too.
Absolutely.
Well, there's an argument to be said that randomness or luck in a game is the reason we enjoy that is that it's evocative of the randomness of life. If that's true, the luck in this game is completely evocative of the randomness and gonna get you about to die aspect of Battlestar Galactica. Every element of this game evokes that show for me. How many different ways are there to lose? Doesn't
6.
matter. There's a million because there's that many million ways to die on the voyage home to Earth. There's just so much like harassment. There's so many outside forces harassing you, just like on the show. There's constant crises that you have to overcome, just like on the show. There's a traitor, at least one, usually more, in your midst, just like on the show. This game just evokes the show so well for me. It's awesome. So immersive.
I can kind of agree with that. I have never seen a single episode of Battlestar Galactica, but even I know that Tom Zarek is a great guy. So I can kind of, see what you mean with that. I can't argue. But, for a social game that you're supposed to be so immersed in, that you're supposed to be enjoying everyone's company around the table so much, it's just too complex. I mentioned earlier that it's very hard for the traders to win if they don't come out until the second dealing of the loyalty cards. It's also very, very hard for the traders to win if they're first-time players. And in a game that you really want to be able to play with a mixed audience. So, if I bring this over to a party or something, maybe not, something too loose, but if I want to be able to play this with new people and old people mixed. And if the new people happen to be dealt out the trader cards, if they're the Cylons, forget it. They just don't understand when to reveal, how to reveal, when not to, how to spoil the pot over time. It's just there's too much to learn that first time.
Yeah.
And for a game that's like 4 hours,
And
that's a big time save.
It is really hard to instruct on what kind of traders' behaviors you should do, because then if you're not the trader and you see them doing the exact things you told them to do,
certainly,
right,
that'll be a tell.
It's really hard.
So there's just too much going on here. It's just too complex for a trader game.
Well, in general, now we can talk in for real how we feel about the game. I still love it. This is a great social game. The first time I played it, I ran into the same problem of too complex for trader. I was a trader the first time, didn't do anything, and then I was like, my initial opinion was there's no way you can win, but that's because I didn't fully understand the game. Second playthrough, completely different experience. I totally got it, and it was awesome, and I've been in love ever since. Unfortunately, and I don't get a chance to play it too much, just because it is such a complex game. The My Gaming Group it really isn't into that level of rulesy detail. But any chance I get, I'm going to play it, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
This one's given me a lot of memorable moments. I will always remember when a friend of mine XO'd me. He gave me an executive order when I was one of the Cylons. He was right before me in turn order. So he gave me his action. I revealed myself to be a Cylon, went up to the Cylon resurrection ship, and then next turn unleashed fury with my fleet mobilization or whatever Cylon death card I had. And so, it's those kind of moments where just seeing the look on his face when he XO'd me and a grin appeared on mine, those moments make the game worth playing. However, I am still waiting for the perfect trader game. Shadows over Camelot doesn't do it for me. I think this one's a little better than Shadows, but it's still not perfect. If this were much more streamlined, if there were maybe more, if it was a little simpler maybe for the trader to kind of spoil the pot over time, because sometimes, quite frankly, there just aren't enough people involved in the skill checks for the trader to do it without being instantly detected or very nearly.
You do have to pick your moments.
So this one is, again, I have not seen the perfect traitor game. I like this one. I like Saboteur, but it still has problems, mostly in the complexity of it and in the still relatively limited traitor options. So I'm going to give this one a 7. I like it. I just can't play with as many people as I'd like to.
All right, well, that's our review of Battlestar Galactica. Get ready for the breakdown. And this is the breakdown of Battlestar Galactica from Fantasy Flight. BSG is long-form gaming at its finest. It'll take you 3 to 4 hours to play it, so we give it 95 long and 5 short. It's an incredibly fast game. There's near constant participation for all players, so we give it 5 slow and 95 fast. We give it 50-50 on luck and skill because the game can still win even if the humans are playing at their finest and the Cylons aren't. For strategy and tactics, we give it another 50-50. The cards you play and the actions you take are all tactical decisions except when you're trying to uncover the Cylon or remain hidden as a Cylon. For interaction, we give it a perfect 100. It is a social game, and all your actions are going to affect the other players. We give it a perfect 100 in immersion. From the character's abilities to the overwhelming outside forces, all of this pulls you into the game and into the world of Battlestar Galactica. We give it 25 simplicity and 75 complexity. There are lots of rulesy elements to the game, and new players, as the traitors, often don't take full advantage of their silent-y traitoriness. We give it 95 grandeur and only 5 portability because it's a very large game. It fits in an average-sized box, but it takes up a lot of space at the table, and it looks good doing it. We give it 40 expandability and 60 completeness. Fantasy Flight has shown us that there's plenty of ways to expand the game, but if you never do, there's plenty of replayable content in the base game. On our trophy scales, we give it 3 trophies for originality. There are plenty of other traitor games out there, but the communal skill check system gives the traitors options they don't have in other games. For value, we give it 4 trophies. It's moderately priced, but there are tons of quality components in there. Mike gives Battlestar Galactica a 7 out of 10. Tom gives it an 8 out of 10, and that is the breakdown.
We hope you enjoyed jumping through space with us today in Battlestar Galactica. Next week, in the Chit Chat, we're going to talk about false choices. The idea that certain games present what seem like an array of strategic options when only one of them is actually viable. And we're going to be playing Bang, the fun social game of the law.
See our Kickstarter page, link below, to help us fund Season 3. We need your help. See also our Facebook and Twitter pages. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly updates. And leave us your comments on what brain-burning games you love or hate.
And why. See you next week.
On our trophy scales, we give it 3 trophies for originality. There are plenty of traitor games that came before it, but the communical is a word.